Emma had always been fascinated by dolls, especially the intricate handmade ones that her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Whitaker, crafted. The elderly woman had lived alone for as long as Emma could remember, working in her little shop at the end of the street, which was filled with porcelain faces, glassy eyes, and delicate dresses. Mrs. Whitaker's dolls were famous in the town, each with an eerie lifelike quality that made them look as if they were watching you. One chilly autumn afternoon, as Emma walked home from school, she noticed Mrs. Whitaker standing on her doorstep, holding something in her hands. The old woman smiled warmly and beckoned her over. "Emma, dear," Mrs. Whitaker began in her soft, raspy voice, "I have something special for you." Emma's eyes widened as Mrs. Whitaker revealed a beautiful doll, dressed in a green velvet gown with golden buttons. Its face was delicate, framed by dark, curly hair that looked strikingly like Emma's own. But it wasn't just the hair. The doll's face was a near mirror image of hers. Its blue eyes sparkled, its tiny nose was perfectly shaped, and even the small freckle by its cheek matched Emma's own. "I made this just for you," Mrs. Whitaker said, her voice warm but slightly strange, as if she were sharing a secret. "It's a gift, my dear. I put a piece of my heart into every doll, but this one, I put something extra. Take good care of her." Emma was touched and thanked Mrs. Whitaker profusely, cradling the doll in her arms as she walked home. That night, she placed the doll on her nightstand, where it sat facing her bed. She thought it would be comforting to have something so beautiful close by, as if watching over her. However, as she turned off the light and settled into bed, she couldn't shake an odd feeling. The doll's glassy eyes caught the faint moonlight, and for a moment, Emma felt as if it were truly watching her. She dismissed the thought, telling herself it was just her imagination, and drifted off to sleep. The next morning, Emma woke up feeling unusually tired. Her muscles ached, and she had a strange heaviness about her. She couldn't remember having trouble sleeping, so the exhaustion felt strange. Pushing the thought aside, she glanced at the doll and blinked. Its eyes looked different, the same blue as before, but they seemed deeper somehow, as if there were a new glint of awareness within them. She shook her head, chalking it up to her sleepiness, and went on with her day. Each night, Emma would place the doll on her nightstand, and each morning, she woke up feeling weaker. Her once energetic spirit seemed to dim, her cheeks grew paler, and her eyes, once bright, looked increasingly dull. By the end of the week, she found it hard to get out of bed. Her parents grew worried, wondering if she was coming down with the flu, but no doctor could explain her condition. One evening, after another exhausting day, Emma held the doll in her hands, examining it closely. There was something unnerving about its face now. The eyes appeared more expressive, almost human. The curve of its mouth looked softer, almost like it was smiling ever so faintly. Emma shivered and placed the doll back on the nightstand, turning it so that it faced away from her. But even as she lay in bed, she felt the doll's presence. It was as if an invisible tether connected them, drawing energy from her. That night, her dreams were dark and restless. She dreamed of the doll walking toward her, its tiny hands reaching out, touching her face, its cold fingers sinking into her skin. The next morning, Emma could barely lift her head from the pillow. Every bone in her body ached, her skin felt cold and clammy, and her mind was clouded with fatigue.